Okay, good evening, everybody. Yes, welcome again. This is 412. Now, before we proceed today, we are actually going to be rounding up today, and we are hopefully, if I don't elaborate too much in explanation, we should be rounding up maybe in an hour or but less than 2 hours, most likely. So we'll have a brief talk. Now, the practical, I happen to almost forget or forgot that this week there'll be public holiday, Good Friday. So Thursday and Saturday. Remember, we're supposed to we are doing this practical thing to help people in case those that cannot make it on Saturday. But I want to implore that if all of us can be around tomorrow for the practical session, I will be very, very grateful. If everybody that will have today, or those everybody that has been on the group that is actively involved, if we can be around tomorrow for practical, it will be very wonderful. So that if you can have a weekend Friday and a weekend to yourself. And also I get to quickly plan out some other few things. But if not, we'll have to schedule for Saturday. And because we're quite a number of us, well, when we come around tomorrow, depending on the turnout, I would create an alternative. But like I would want to implore that we can, if we can be available tomorrow. So I will just make the practical one day, compress everything intensively, then you have the remainder of the holiday and all that to yourself. Okay, so welcome everybody. We are about kicking off. And just in case you notice that some people are trying to come in and I got carried away teaching, please call my attention to it like we did yesterday. All right. So now we spoke about bearings yesterday. We spoke about how that bearings they support transmission system. Just a minute. I want to be sure that my audio is up. Okay, I'm good. Everybody can hear me. Sorry. Okay. All good. Okay, so now yesterday we talked about bearings, and how that bearing they can help us or this a support transmission system, which means your gear and your belt, your gears, your belt and pulleys, your chain and sprocket drives, how that bearing come in place to also support transmission system. Without them supporting it, we have too much of friction. As a matter of fact, we spoke about types of bearing. We talk about plain bearing, lining bearing, journal bearings, so our taper roller, the rolling element, etc. Hmm? We spoke about quite a number of things. We spoke about the inner race, the outer race, the ball itself or the rolling element, then the cage. I said it can also be called retainer or separator cage. Hmm? So let's proceed to shaft. Now, shaft, like everyone, everybody has actually seen a shaft. So that I would like to know that as long as you've seen a cylindrical um, piece, whether it is wood, whether it is metal, whether it is plastic, it is a shaft. So when you see a cylindrical piece of material, we call it a shaft. So if it is a wood, we say a wooden shaft. If it is metal, you say a metal shaft. If it is plastic, you say a plastic shaft. But in the world of mechanical drives, lubrication and maintenance that we can use in areas such as waste management, we'll see more often metal shafts. So when I say shaft, it's just a cylindrical piece of what object. Now that's in the layman term. Now shaft is a member, usually of what circular section, which supports gears, sprockets, pulleys, and rotor. Now this is another component. Component number two that supports was transmission. Bearing yesterday we spoke about that bearing also help to support rotation by reducing what the friction and allow what operation to run smoothly. Also, shaft is a member, usually of a circular section which supports gears. You see, supports what transmission system, components, gears, sprockets, pulleys, rotors, etc. And is subjected to torsion or what axial load, acting singly or in combination. So what does this mean? If this supports transmission system and transmission system is to help us what get rotation, excuse me, from our driver then to our driven in our waste recycling machineries, what then happen is that remember that your your rotary motion is coming from your driver, and your driver is what is the source of what rotation. It has its own form of what power, torque, which is what the rotating force or the turning force of the body. So that rotary motion from the driver has a turning force. It has some amount of force which can what do work. Now that force also, because a shaft is usually used to support, is a membrane, a circular membrane to support gear. So which means you can mount gear to it, you can mount sprocket onto it, and you can mount plate onto it. because the torque is being transferred to the driver to the transmission will also rotate, and as a result also that equivalent turning force will also be felt on the shaft. And if we don't do certain things like alignment, balancing, some sort of lubrication and all those things I'll still make mention of, that amount of force, if it's not proper, we don't look at those certain factors, it will tell more on this shaft. And as a result, because the shaft is like a foundation or like a pillar that is supporting a house structure, if the house structure is tougher or is heavier than what the pillar can bear, the pillar will almost collapse or you start seeing defects. Similarly to on shaft that is used in mechanical drive machineries to transmit motion or to help support the transmission system for what motion, can be considered like a pillar. So when the load is too much coming from your rotary motion to the transmission component, which may be your gear, your shaft, or your sprocket, that rotating force that is transmitted from the rotary motion, the driver, to the transmission that will then go to the driven, would also, that force, that turning force, that torque turning force will also be experienced on that shaft. And as a result, we can call it what that force acting on that shaft, depending on its direction and depending on how it's been applied, we can call it what? Load. They are called load. So that's why you see the word, they are subject to torsion or axial load, acting singly or in what combination. So depending on how the shaft is being used and where it's being used in that drive system for waste recycling, the load that can be experienced may be either a combination or just torsion and axial load. I don't know if you understand. So now that makes it easier for us to go to the next line of explanation. Remember when we were talking about bearings, I spoke about how that I will talk about load experience on the bearing. Remember, bearing and shaft. Bearing also supports your transmission system. Shaft also supports the transmission system. So to a certain degree, when they encounter this load effect on them, they tend to cut across both your shaft and your bearing, because really your shaft is what is being suspended into your bearing. Now look at your bearing here. Now, or let's use here. If you look at this inner race here, is where the shaft will go into. This inner race, I believe you can see my pointer, is where the shaft is going into the bearing. So the bearing supports the shaft support the what? Helps now support the transmission system, which is the gear and the pulley. So which means indirectly we can also say that the bearing is also what supporting transmission system. This here what is the inner race, is where the shaft is going to. From our mechanical measurement and fitting in waste what's called waste management, we spoke about what? Clearance and fit. We spoke about limit and fit. So fitting, mating a shaft going in here to mate to this bearing, the inner race of the bearing, so that when rotation is being sent, this bearing suspends that shaft and it can freely what? Move or freely what? Rotate. Now similarly also this shaft, because you have certain load experience on the shaft, it also what? Translates to also the bearing. The bearing also what? Takes some of those shocks. Now shaft is a mechanical component used in various machines and equipment to transmit rotational motion and torque from one part of the machine to another. It is used to transmit rotational motion and torque. Remember I spoke about torque. So which, if torque, like I've always been defining, is the turning force of a rotating body, which means that force will also be felt and be experienced on this shaft. And if that force is excessive beyond this shaft, or there are certain things and certain factors like misalignment, improper balancing of the foundation, etc., it will cause damage and defects to the shaft. Take this shaft as an example of what? A pillar of a building, and the building itself is resting on the pillar. If the building weight is now getting tougher and bigger than the pillar, what will happen? The pillar will start having defects. It may want to bend, it may want to break. Similarly also with your shaft, when the load is too much, first the load of what? Of the rotary motion. Second, depending on where the shaft is used. If the shaft is being used in a conveyor belt system to transport waste from one side to another side, what then happens is that some of the force from the rotary motion will be felt on the shaft and on the bearing. Then the waste itself, if the weight of the waste is too much on that what's called conveyor, the extra weight of that waste will also tell on the shaft again. So two loads will be coming from what? Different angle. So that brings us to the same point of, they can be subject to torsion or axial load, or it can be subject to load, the combination of this torsion and axial load on the shaft. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, or if you are getting the gist. Now, types of shaft. The truth is there are many shafts. There are what? Many shafts used in different applications. But in our case here, what you commonly find is the plane shaft and the step shaft. You commonly find plane shaft and step shaft. But now there's a trick to actually using a shaft or using shafts to support transmission system. So if you want to mount gears, you want to mount sprocket, you want to mount okay, sprocket might even permit you. You want to mount gears and you want to mount pulley, particularly gears and pulley. You must use a what? A stepped shaft. So how do I know a step shaft? That's the next question. So Mr. Eze, how do I identify a step shaft? A step shaft is the type of shaft you are seeing here that has what? Different diameters. So that this extra, you see this smaller diameter here, and this extra you're seeing here, it can take in more shock. So which means if I mount a pulley around here, even when it's transmitting rotational force, because of this is a wider surface area and wider diameter, it can take in what? It can to an extent withstand some of that stress. Unlike if I put the pulley only in this straight diameter, eventually if the stress is too much, it might actually bend the shafts. But this step shaft will take a great deal of time for it to bend. As a result, excuse me, it takes a great deal of time for it to what? To bend. As a result, we can use this to mount our what? This shoulder, this step shaft. We can then use it to what? As a good practice to mount and to support our transmission system. Or our transmission component like the gears and what? The pulley. In the case of sprocket already has a hole that allows the shaft to fit in, so you don't really need a what? So this thing you're seeing here, this extra diameter is called a shoulder. Please take note of that. It is called a shoulder, as in your head, your shoulder. So it is called a shoulder. And that is where most of the pressure, most of the load will be felt. However, because of the bigger diameter, it is able to withstand that shock. Now, types of shaft. I already made mention of plane shaft. So if you look at this plane shaft here, what will you observe? They have what's consistent, even and parallel diameter. Everybody take a look and observe. Can we see that? That it has what? Even diameter. The diameter are even. Same diameter all through. Parallelism is what is good here. Now, we also have another type of shaft called drive shaft. You find this usually your vehicle automation and automotive vehicles transmission system for automotive vehicles. Also, you look at what the propeller shaft. Now, this propeller shaft, many of you have seen it, but you don't know. If you see all these big tippers and all these trailers that are running or they are moving on the express, if you check underneath, you will see one thing like a straight rod that is rotating. That straight rod that is rotating or that straight shaft is a form of transmission transmitting to the differential gears of your vehicle that will now send motion or uneven motion or torque or speed to what individual tires. Especially when you make want to make a right turn or a left turn, it is what is responsible for that from the propeller shaft. So in our case here, if you look at your garbage truck polymer, what happened is underneath it you should find what something like this. They call the propeller shaft. You have spindles, you have crankshaft and camshaft. Then you have what wheel and axle. Now crankshaft and camshaft, they are special type of shafts. Yes, you may see them, but not all too often like that. But really, they are not scarce to see. They are usually in vehicles. Hmm? So these are just to mention a few. These are shafts, So on this shaft, if we use this plane shaft to mount a gear or a pulley, what will happen is that place where we mounted it, it will start bending easily because of the amount of force it will be receiving compared to the other portion of the shaft. I don't know if you get my point. Do we get my point?
Yeah.
All right. So now application of shaft in waste management. Power transmission. Shaft are used to transmit power from a motor to an engine. Shaft are used to transmit power from a motor or engine to various components of waste management machineries, such as conveyor belts, shredders, crushers, and compactors. They ensure that the rotational motion from the power source is efficiently delivered to these components, enabling the process of waste materials. Hmm? Now, conveyor system. In materials are widely used for transportation of waste material. Shaft are an essential part of conveyor system. They are what? Essential. Connecting the drive motors to the rollers or pulleys that move the conveyor belt. They help convey waste material from one point to another within the facility, facilitating what sorting, processing, and what transportation. Conveyor systems. Now let's talk about loads on bearing and shafts. Remember that I said that both of them, both bearing and shaft, they are actually aids that support the transmission system. Hmm? Now combined loads. Let's talk about combined load. Bearing often experience. Now before I go, now look at this image to my right here, everybody. This image here. This one. Now, what you see here is a straight shaft. Transverse load, according to this arrow, is what a load or a type of load that is experienced vertically while the shaft is in operation on that shaft, vertically, a vertical force. Mhm. Now, we also have what torsion. Torsion load is actually what twisting, where you see the shaft by virtue of transmitting and helping what um rotary motion that is gotten from the prime mover. What then happen is, excuse me. Okay. So what then happen is that you can have a form of squeezing. It's going to look like as though the shaft are squeezed. That's called torsion. Sometimes you can have it squeezed and bent. It's called torsion and bending. That one is actually a defect, but we're talking about loads now. So you see this side that has this forward arrow that cut all the way. Axial load actually means what load that is experienced what horizontally, that allows what for back and forth movement. In an horizontal pattern, we have what load experienced on that shaft. Excuse me. Now, okay, it's easy to torsional load. We said that axial load, torsional load, deflection due to what bending movement. So basically, these are one of the few things you can experience when working with your mechanical drives maintenance and what lubricant system that you happen to carry out on an engine, or take for example on what's it called, on a plant, or in a plant of what waste recycling processes. Now, radial load. Okay, so now let's have combined load. Bearing often experiences a combination of radial and axial load simultaneously. These are termed what combined loads. For instance, in a pulley system, the bearing may what experience radial load from the weight it is supporting, and axial load from the tension of the belt. Mm. Now, radial load. This is the load of acting perpendicular to the axis of rotation or motion. Radial loads are common in application where the bearing supports a shaft that rotate or move in a linear direction. For example, in a wheel bearing, the weight of the vehicle exerts a radial on the bearing. We'll take that again. For example, in a wheel bearing, that's a ball bearing. How do they mean by wheel? The weight of the vehicle exerts a radial load on the bearing. So which means what? A load that is experienced around the perimeter. So to remember for short, radial load are actually loads that are around the perimeter, that exist around the perimeter of a shaft, the entire circumference. From the word radius, radial load. So when you remember the word radius, you remember the term radial. So from the word radius, with radius, you actually need to draw a circle. So across the entire shaft. Then now axial load. This is the load acting parallel to the axis of rotation or motion. It is acting what? Parallel. Which I said is actually a back and forth movement, in the horizontal. So it's a load that is experienced horizontally on the shaft. So weight loading can put serious amount of strain on recycling machine. It can, as a matter of fact, it can stall it. Stall, I mean, it can stop the station and cause the station to stop. However, if anything can cause the station to stop after, you'll never get home, which is your problem. Work. Because it's now overloaded and the force cannot overcome that overloading, that's the force of the rotary motion, coming from the transmission or from the driver to the driven, it cannot withstand that overloading. What will then happen? It will affect and put some extra shocks on your shaft or bearing, which will increase the amount of load it will be experiencing. And soon enough, you start having resistance because that rotation is supposed to be transmitted. And when you start having resistance, the electrical makeup of that prime mover will start heating up, and before you know, it will what? Be in flames. So now, effect of load on shaft. The effect of load on shaft. Now, like I already mentioned before, torsion. Torsion is something that is like it's twisting. Twisting. Just imagine when you're squeezing your clothes. You washed, you did laundry, and you're squeezing your clothes. So that's what torsion is like. As well as twisting, like a skewing force occurred on it. Then there's bending. Then there's torsion combined with bending. There's torsion combined with an axial tension or compression. Now, if you look at this image here, you see that this example here you're seeing is an example of a what? Of a shoulder on a shaft. Yes, a shoulder. So, and I already said that if you are going to support, if you are going to put or mount your what? Your transmission system, certain things have to be considered, which, as a matter of fact, when considered, it then help us to know if we're going to use it, if we're putting a bearing, rather, if we're putting a gear or a pulley in that region. But like I already said, if you see this area actually indicates that when you put anything, any transition component here, the tendency is that you will experience more rotary force around this side. And if care is not taken, it will what? It will dent it. It will spoil this step shaft. But in a case where you have machines that can help you provide, that can help you quickly machine another shaft, you can give them the dimension such that they create this shoulder that will allow the pulley to rest on them. Now, torsion combined with axial tension or what? Or compression. Application of what? Shaft in waste management. Shredding and cutting equipment. Waste shredders and crushers are essential for reducing the size of bulky waste material. Now, shafts are used to connect the motor to the cutting or crushing the mechanism or crushing mechanism within these machines. Ensure everything, ensuring the efficient operation of the equipment. Now we'll talk about balers also. You can use find shaft in balers. Balers in recycling facility, balers are used to compact. You see, you compact it and package recyclable what? Materials like cardboard, paper, etc. So if it's shaft play a role in driving the hydraulic system that compresses and form this material into what? Into compact bale. I already showed us what a baler can do in the earlier video. Baler is just help us to reduce waste material to size for easy transportation or for easy storage. This is an example of the shredder teeth. Now, seals. In as much as there's rotation and there's lubrication on that machinery, what I say, as long as there's rotation and there's lubrication on that machinery, what will happen is that the lubrication, when the engine or rather when the machine is operating, certain things can happen in the sense that because we want oil flowing around, we may have oil seal or nipple gun for grease at different points in the plant. Now, so let's really buttress this seal. So seals are used to prevent the leakage of liquids, solid and gases from item of rotating machinery and other type of what? Industrial equipment, and to stop dirt and other sources of external contaminants from entering a machine or piping system. So many of us have seen seals, but we probably will not take cognizance of it. We'll still talk about it here. So now there are two categories of seals. We have dynamic seals, which can be O-ring seals, O-ring seals, piston seals, mechanical seals, and static seals, which are gasket seals, flange seals. So now before I proceed, this dynamic seal O-ring, So I don't know how many of us have seen this kind of black rubber like thing before. How many of us have seen it? That's actually a seal. If you have seen something like this before, it is called what? A seal. Now, dynamic seals, O-ring seals, piston seals, mechanical seals. Piston seal. So, what was the meaning of dynamic seal actually? Because you said well, it can categorize into two, and there's what static seal, gasket seal, and flange seal. So, for me, an alternate. No, sorry, excuse me. Now, the difference between dynamic seals and static seal is that dynamic seals are actually used in areas of application where you have what relative motion. Where you have what relative motion. As a result, that's why you have the word or the name dynamic. Means it's not used in application where there is no movement. It has you will find this kind of seal where there are movement. Take for instance, this what's it called? Your garbage truck. It has a form of hydraulic cylinder where you can use to compress, or a form of like a mini baler that it compresses what waste once it has collected quite a number of waste, and there's quite not enough amount of space to store more waste. That form of compression is similar to what a baler would do. Now the cylinder responsible for that, in that scenario, that cylinder is having what movement back and forth, the seal in that area of application will be the dynamic seal, because it is used in the area of application. It is used in areas where you have what relative motion. Now, static seals, gasket seals, and what flange seals. Okay, so just like I've already made mention for the dynamic seal, which means this static seal from the word also static means they are not what in a they are not used in area of application where there's what movement or relative motion. So what you have here, this type of seal you are seeing here is used in piston for engine, usually at the flywheel or at the front of the engine. You see a seal like this called a lip style crank seal. But we're not going to be talking so much about or anything related to automobile or engine here in this outline. So we just stick to find that you understand that dynamic seal are actually used where you can find what relative motion. Now, O-rings. You also see O-rings, they are rubber like, looking at rubber like what's called this conventional rubber that people wear around. They're looking like that, but they're used for sealing, to prevent either a death or set of death from coming to a component, or rather allowing another component introduce death somewhere or contaminants. So these are what some of these seals can do for us: prevent leakages of lubricants, and also can prevent any form of leakage. So we also have gaskets or mechanical. This other this I'll be talking about also the mechanical components. These are mechanical seals. You have gaskets and you have flange or flanges. So usually you find this kind of flanges, not this pipeline. If you observe clearly, or if you are kind of observant, if you see a pipeline on the floor, you see something like this. Well, yeah, you see something like this. So then, applications of seals in waste management. Now, okay, so we just spoke about. I'm coming. Excuse me. Okay. So now, applications of seal in waste management. Gasket seals. Gaskets are typically made of rubber or other flexible materials, and are used to create a tight leak-proof seal. You see that? Leak-proof. Between two surfaces. In waste management, gasket seal are used in what? In landfill liners. This is another form of what? Waste machinery. To prevent what? Leachate. Liquid generated by what? Decomposing waste. They're actually a form of liquid waste from leaking into the soil and groundwater. They are also used in flange connections of pipe, valves, tanks in waste treatment facilities to prevent fluid or gas leak. Now, O-rings are circular seals made of elastomeric material like rubber or silicone, they use they are used in waste management equipment such as hydraulic system in waste compactor and waste collection. They are used to prevent leaks. Sealing joint and connection in pump valves and pipe to ensure what airtight or watertight seal. Sometimes this seal, which actually gasket, can be a type of seal. Hmm? I'm sorry. All right. So now, mechanical seals. These are seals that are used in pumps and agitators to prevent the leakage of liquid, especially in water treatment processes. They help maintain a secure seal between the rotating shaft and the housing, ensuring that what the hazardous or corrosive liquid do not escape into the environment. In waste water treatment plants, mechanical seals are used in pumps, not the conventional type you see in domestic home. Yes, they might be similar in look, but you have them heavier and bigger in wastewater recycling plants. Now, in wastewater treatment plants, mechanical seals are used in pumps to prevent leakages of what undertreated or untreated wastewater. So we talk about couplings also. So now we've been speaking about certain things like alignment and things you look out for when you're working. When you're mounting, look out for alignment, etc. etc. Now, what is a coupling? A coupling is a mechanical device used to connect two shafts or components together. Coupling from the word couple. So when they say a couple will involve what two human beings. I'm going as lame as possible now, like in layman definition. A couple will be that you have what husband and wife, two persons making up what one. So similarly, coupling in mechanical drives, lubrication and system for maintenance, in waste management, entails what merging two pieces together to become what one. Now, when we do that, what happens with that analogy? We can now say that okay, um, shaft one and shaft two coupled together is a what? They will produce what? A rotation. So we can say we successfully use a couple, or these two are coupled to each other. So from the word couple, so use layman term to remember, then you know what a couple is. A coupling is a mechanical device used to connect two shafts or components together, allowing them to transmit power, motion, or literally anything that is happening on the driver. One that is giving us that rotation. Now, there are two shafts. They are used to connect two shafts or components together, allowing them to transmit power, motion, or torque while accommodating for what misalignment, shock, and vibration. Couplings are designed to ensure what a secure connection while permitting some degree of what flexibility or movement between the connected components. So couple will also permit some level of what flexibility. Now, what are the major type of couple you will find? You will find flexible couplings, you will find rigid couplings, disc coupling, you will find universal joint, and you find grid couplings. Now, when you come around, I have these couplings to put across to you. Sorry, where is this thing again? Now, look at this here. Excuse me. See, this here is a coupling. Go this portion here, this half portion. It goes to your either your driver or your driven. Then the other one goes to your what? Your driven. What then happens is that you will successfully now connect two shafts together as one. In a case where you are short of length of a particular shaft and you need to transmit motion and you have couplings, you can also use your couplings to try and join them together so you have what a singular output rotation coming from what either a transmission system or from the rotary system directly. That's when I mean rotary system from the driven system. Couplings, they are vital components in various waste management machinery and equipment, helping to ensure that the efficient operation of these systems. helping to ensure the efficient operation of this system. Couplings. Conveyor system. We use flexible couplings which are used in conveyors to connect or drive shafts and reduce shock and vibration, helping transporting waste material efficiently. Excuse me. Now, shoulders and crushers. Couplings such as a gear coupling and a disc coupling are employed in waste shredders and crushers. I'll take that again. Shredders and crushers. Coupling such as gear coupling and disc coupling are employed in waste shredders and crushers to transmit the high torque required for what? For size reduction. Now, let's talk of pumps also, where you can apply couplings. Your pump. Waste management often involves the use of pumps to move liquids or slurry. Coupling help connect the pump's motor to the what? To the meter. Sorry, excuse me, not that. Couplings help connect the pump motor to the impeller, enabling the transfer of what? Fluids. Sorting system. Now, universal joints may be used in sorting system where there is need for flexible connection between conveyors and sorting equipment, allowing for changes in direction and what? Alignment. Sorting system. Look at this. We have an input shaft that's supposed to power this shredder blade. You have your gears, which means gears not using the multiplying the force to give us that amount of value. So we have couplings here. Now this input shaft that goes into this red casing, this input shaft that goes into this red casing can be called the driven shaft. Or no, rather this is the drive shaft because you have your gears here. So most likely your gears is what bringing in motion, most likely transmitting from a prime mover down there. Then this is the output shaft, which will be the driven shaft, driven. Then this one here will be what? The input shaft, because this is connecting from here to this other one. Let me take that again. So you have two shafts proceeding somewhere. So one will actually be your input, the other one will be your output. So depending on the orientation, wherever direction you are facing, or wherever the direction of your rotation, your rotating motion or driver's system is, you turn your shafts that way so that you can couple them properly. Now, like I said, I'm going to try and speed through all of this so that we can make up our practical. Couplings, rather lubrication. Sorry. Oh, sorry. So now, just a minute, pardon me. I mean, okay. Just a minute. Okay, okay. All right. So now we'll just say make a few, take a few notes on. Allow us to give more extensive note on lubrication as a whole. Coming, apologies. Now, okay. So, okay. Sorry. Now, lubrication. Apologies for that. I had quite a number of them opened. Now, lubrication is very critical. Remember when we spoke about metal to metal contact, what happens? There's increased heat, there's friction, etc. So because we have rotating bodies, our machinery, our waste recycling machinery, they are rotating, doing one work from one form to another, metal to metal contact. So it is expedient that we carry out lubrication. Lubrication is very key. One of the chief things you need to keep your machine up and running is lubrication. It can help and greatly improve or increase the life strength of that machinery. Now, lubrication serves to reduce friction as well as to prevent what wear and corrosion, while shielding it against both solid and liquid contaminants. Now, in theory, under optimal condition, a suitable lubricated bearing could endure forever. They said in theory, that's which means in pen and paper, under normal condition, eh, a suitable lubricated bearing could actually endure what forever. But this is not the case realistically. So which means realistically is not always true. But nonetheless, a bearing that receive approximate lubrication can stand the highest chance of what attaining maximum service life. Just like I explained. Now, lubricating form a protective thin film layer between the surface of mating component, bearing, metal to metal contact, even when subjected to what heavy load. Rolling bearing are typically lubricated with what? With grease or oil. While in certain specialized industry, a solid lubricant may be employed. Hmm? So while in certain specialized industries, a solid lubricant may be employed. Sometimes you have what's called self-lubricating materials. You have gaseous lubrication, which is abro, this popular abro. But when you come around, or penetrating oil, that's what they call it, penetrating oil. It comes when you want to use that lubricating oil, you have to spray like fleet in the form of aerosol. So that's a gaseous lubricant. So let's talk about at least under lubricant, at least a bit of oil, grease, etc. Now lubricant comes in all three forms: liquid, solid, and gas. Oil is a liquid lubricant used in what various applications. Now, depending on the context of where it is being used, can be further categorized as what below. Light oil. The areas of application. Light oil often referred to as what thin or low viscosity oil. Hmm? Areas of application of light oil. Light oils often referred to as thin or low viscosity oils and are commonly used in application where rapid flow and less resistance are required. Make excuse me. Some typical areas of application include precision machinery such as small engines, clocks and instruments, fine mechanical assemblies where parts moves at high speed and require what? Minimal friction. You can also use this light oil in what? High speed electric and small appliances. Precision tools and equipment need to be what controlled precisely. All right, so let's talk about medium oil. Medium oil, just like we spoke about light oil, so they have viscosity. Viscosity was the flow index, or let me say, better put this way, viscosity is the opposition or direction to flow of a liquid. So how viscous is this? Is the ability for that liquid or that lubricant to flow. If it's very thick, it will be very difficult or it will be very slow for that what's it called oil it will be very slow for the oil to flow. That would then say that what that oil is a medium kind of oil. Now medium oils have viscosity range from between light and heavy oil, making them versatile for what a variety of application. Some common area of application includes automotive engines, particularly in moderate operating condition, industrial machinery such as pumps, compressors, and gearboxes operating under what moderate load and speed, hydraulic systems in medium machinery. sliding mechanisms and bearing in general purpose industrial application. Now we'll talk about heavy oils. Area of application for heavy high viscosity oils are utilized in application where high load is extreme, where there's high load, extreme temperatures, or slow speed are present. Some typical areas of application include large industrial machinery such as heavy duty gearboxes, rolling mill if you want to crush that stem, um a rolling mills and crushers, for crushing things. Marine engines and equipment operating in what severe condition, low speed bearing and heavily loaded components in mining, construction and heavy what manufacturing. Open gears, chain and wire ropes subjected to high load and harsh environments. These are areas where you can use heavy oil. um Sometimes if you happen to use heavy oil, let's say in your automobile, it may be hard and difficult for that automobile to start because that oil alone it has to overcome that force. um Inside your oil sump in your vehicle, if you use heavy oil, take for instance, it has to now what accommodate for that heaviness of oil. So it's for what this kind of heavy oil are used in areas where there's high load demand. Grease, they can be solid or semi-solid, which is actually oil with a what a soap thickener added, is used for what for bearing on for bearings operating under normal speed and what temperature and other temperature condition. It is simpler and less expensive to apply than oil. It is better as it is of it it offers better adhesion, better protection against moisture and contaminants. Approximately what 90% of bearing application employ grease. So when you come around, I'll show you something called the grease nipple. The grease nipple, yeah, grease nipple. That is where you apply grease for your bearings. So if you are trying to lubricate your bearings, you don't try to open it. You don't try and separate bearings, but you can lubricate it, however, from a port provided to you by the manufacturer. You can always lubricate it because many bearing what employ the use of grease. Now, gaseous lubricants. Gaseous lubricants refers to a lubricating substance that exists in a gaseous state, typically as a gas and vapor, and is as a gas and vapor and is utilized to reduce friction and wear between moving surfaces. Mm. Gaseous lubricants are often employed in high temperature and high speed application where traditional liquid that traditional as light oil or medium oil or solid lubricants may not be suitable or practical. Examples of gaseous lubricants. Now let's look at examples of what gaseous lubricants. They include air, nitrogen, carbon dioxide and steam. These lubrication form a thin film or boundary layer. Okay, so these lubricants they form a thin film or boundary layers between contacting surface, providing lubrication and reducing frictional forces during operation. Gaseous lubricants offer advantages such as minimal contamination. The gaseous, it has no room to store dirt because it's being sprayed like what, like your perfume. It's called penetrating oil, so it comes out in a gaseous atomized form, so you don't even have the chance to what it doesn't have the chance to be what contaminated. High thermal stability, that's the heat handling capacity of the what gaseous lubricants. Compatibility with sealed environments. They are commonly used in industries such as aerospace, power generation and what high temperature manufacturing processes. So having said all of this, how then do we know when is what time do we do this? What time do we schedule one or two things for maybe routine checks to carry out maintenance etc. That is where you have maintenance and management. Now this entails what maintenance and management entails what structuring maintenance activities in alignment with a clear and agreed upon policies established by the senior management, waste agencies executive, etc., who bears direct accountability for it. This policy will be conveyed to maintenance engineers, outlining the acceptable standard of maintenance that serves as their guideline. Objectives of the main, or rather, objectives of maintenance management: to prolong the lifespan of asset. Of course, as an investor, as or as somebody who is manning a machine, you also want to be that you are constantly productive. Hmm? So to prolong the lifespan of the asset, you need to carry out certain maintenance routine and routine checks. To prolong the lifespan of assets, process waste processing machineries, opting for maintenance over replacement when financial constraints prevent immediate what replacement. Now, second point will be to optimize the functionalities of installed equipment for waste recycling processes, maximizing return on investment whenever what feasible. Hmm? So remember we spoke earlier that waste also can be a source of what livelihood. So at some point we want to be ensuring that we're having what consistency in what waste recycling. So those that benefits them as what a source of livelihood. Now, also maintenance and type. What are the type of maintenance really? Because anybody may ask you, so what are the types of maintenance? We say you carry maintenance, etc. You try and fix one or two things. So let's talk about what maintenance actually is. And I think after this, we should be done. Then we'll make plans for tomorrow. And I will see buttress some things for you tomorrow when you come, definitely. So just so that you know what to stand in for. Okay. Now, maintenance and type. Maintenance of mechanical drives involve what studying the characteristics, operation, upkeep and lubrication of what components such as shafts, couplings, V-belt and pulleys, chain and sprockets, gears and bearing utilized in what industrial, or rather utilized in waste manufacturing processes. Now, safety protocols as associated with industrial and waste activities encompass a broad and comprehensive scope, encompassing legal mandates delineated in written laws and what the necessary precautions and measures to be implemented to adhere to within an industrial setting for the protection of life and property. So in summary, this is talking about you have safety protocols. So wherever it is that we are carrying out waste operation, there are safety protocols in case of fire, the muster point, the exit, the alarm bell, etc. They actually have a means to curb out, or set a means to curb out any eventualities, so that they can follow what safety protocols. Now, the enforcement of this regulation is the responsibility of government body. It is the enforcement of this regulation is the responsibility of government bodies facilitated through fac factory inspectors, while compliance lie with the management of what industrial entities. Now, these laws pertain to various aspects, including the establishment of industrial or waste facilities, safety standard, health regulation, and what employee welfare, accident prevention, and among others. These are just to mention a few. While you will need maintenance. Hmm? What is maintenance? The mechanical drive involving studying the characteristics of what of operation. Okay, so now types of maintenance. You have unplanned maintenance and planned maintenance, and quite a number of sub note under them. Unplanned maintenance, you have emergency maintenance. This maintenance refers to the type that the task must be promptly carried out to prevent what costly damage to assets. So take for instance, you have a very long chain of processes carrying out waste recycling process, and something then happened that was unforeseen. You didn't plan it, and as a result, if you continue to run or operate that machinery that does waste processing, the machinery itself or the waste handling material, handling machinery can break down. So to avoid that, you need to shut down what form of emergency maintenance. Now, let's talk about breakdown maintenance. This is the type of maintenance that is performed that renders equipment unavailable for production or service for a period. Now, eventually, it has broken down. So let's say, take for instance, when the thing was showing for that there's emergency to be worked on, it wasn't attended to. Eventually, when a machinery, waste processing machinery is supposed to be what undergoing maintenance and is being run and operated, it will have a way of indicating. So if it is ignored, is actually what is actually you want to confirm certain things, certain parameter while the machine is what running. Now, shutdown maintenance is the maintenance exclusively undertaken when equipment is what is offline. So everything it has actually gone from emergency to broken down and it's still in repair. As a result, it is shut down, nobody's using it and it is offline. It is not available for use. Now, still other types of maintenance. We have what planned maintenance. Now, this is a maintenance program that's meticulously planned, which means carefully planned and executed with careful consideration, oversight, and documentation that is tailored to a predefined what facility. In our case, waste facilities. It comprises of what two main components: preventive maintenance. This maintenance system focuses on inspection and replacement procedures aimed at preventing the occurrence of defects. It also, in preventive maintenance, ongoing inspection are conducted to identify what loose components such as vibration, misalignment, wear and tears, lubricant leaks, cleanliness issues. Scheduled shutdown inspection involving what dismantling working parts for what thorough examination. So basically, preventive maintenance actually has to do with a forethought. You already having a concept, a thought of the machinery you're working with as to when is best preferred to carry out maintenance so that no eventualities can occur. Now, corrective maintenance. Just as they say that prevention is better than cure, it is better to have certain things prevented than have what a form of breakdown. Now, corrective maintenance. This maintenance program is implemented at predetermined intervals to minimize the risk of equipment failing to meet what acceptable standards. You see, they are implemented at what predetermined interval under what planned maintenance. It ensures the operational readiness of all equipment by replacing damaged and worn parts. Excuse me. So now, if you, in the case of, let's take for instance, a truck or engine, your garbage truck, if it runs for quite a while, going about collecting waste, collecting wasted liquid and solid, whatever form it may come in, and we should carry out what lubrication service, that's changing all the filters and all the lubricating element and putting a fresh one. Now, you have what it secures the operational readiness of all equipment by replacing damaged and worn parts. Verification has been. Verification is also conducted to ensure that equipment has been adequately what serviced, lubricated, and prepared for what operation. And now we're just almost at the end of this. This was something I was supposed to wrap up yesterday, but I don't want to spend too much time. Now, maintenance activity hints. So if you're carrying out maintenance, there's anything you may want to look out for. The mounting. Now, mounting is actually the platform. Consider it a platform where your driver is mounted on the word mounting. You understand the mechanism of how this thing operates, so that while you're carrying out maintenance, you can understand what's being done, what's been undergone. So that way, it can help you understand the mechanism of how certain machinery works. Balancing. Hmm? It's not that your what's it called now? Your driver is somewhat slanty or somewhat bent because what the mounting is actually improperly seated. Hmm? Now, lubrication, which we already explained the emphasis of what lubrication is, those are the things you look out for: the bearings, transmission, alignment. Now, alignment is very critical because if we don't understand the concept of alignment, we can actually damage more components in the course of trying to create a form of repair, what's it called? A form of repair, routine maintenance or interval maintenance. So if you're not careful with alignment, you can cause certain damage to other components like your couplings. As a matter of fact, you can cause even further damage to your what? Your main transmission aids and components like your gears. We spoke about seal also, guards. Now, these are one of the few things you look at. What we have guards around rotary or rotating drives used in what? In waste recycling facilities. Now, these are areas of concern to look out for when you are carrying out operation of what? Mechanical drive lubrication and maintenance in waste recycling machineries. However, they are not limited to this what alone. You might have other area of concern you might actually help out. So at this point, we can tell that waste in itself, even though it may sound as waste, when properly worked upon, recycled, treated, etc., we can have what a useful commodity that is safe for consumption. We discuss, we also implore that you are waste conscious, so that we can find a way to reuse our waste in, so we have little waste exposed to the environment. And that brings us to the end of mechanical drives, lubrication system, and maintenance. We will be having practical session tomorrow, which is Thursday. So Thursday, I don't know quite a number of us if we can be available. If not, Saturday will come around. Coming, but I want to really implore that everybody be available for the tomorrow's class, so we can just wrap it up once and for all. Excuse me. All right. So, do we have any question? This was something we were supposed to finish yesterday, but I just had to speed through. Do we have any questions? Any question? Anybody? We are actually done. No. Rivers 2, were you people with me?
Yes, we're with you.
Okay, so we are literally done already because I said it was just to wrap up what we didn't finish yesterday. So tomorrow I'm looking at us being around for practical. Can we make it for the physical session practical tomorrow? At least everybody on this call now, so that we just do once and for all. So I don't have to strip the machine up and again, back and forth. If not, we'll have to extend some for some people that will come on Saturday. So let's decide that. Or do we decide that on WhatsApp? But I know it's out of the two options. Definitely tomorrow we're going to have practical. But at the same time, I want it there on Saturday. That's those that may not be around tomorrow. Come on Saturday. But we have seen that from MMF class, or rather from the fittings class, that you start to gain more during the week when you come during the week for the practical. So the Saturday is just to make up. Now, Mr. Uleyi,
Yes, sir.
So please help me. You help me announce on the class group. So if everybody can make it for tomorrow physical session, just help me announce it. So once you do that, let them message you. Tell them that I said they should message you directly. So you give me the number of people that can be available exactly tomorrow. In case anybody can be available tomorrow, then it's fine. If not, the ones that are available Saturday, also, you should just specify that information to be out there in the WhatsApp group. So you just sent me as a fresh message from you. All right. So do we have any question? In if not, we actually are literally done as of yesterday, but just for time's sake, we couldn't really finish that. Any questions? Okay. So I haven't said that I
There's no
convers.
question from my end here. And
All
I
right. So
guess
I guess it's the same for everybody because literally we are rounding up. The main point we could have had more questions was all those gears, all those introduction. This was just wrap up. All right then. So we'll see you tomorrow. So I can prepare some things down for your arrival. So I want us to close early. All right then. So let's end the call. Thank you very much for joining in. I'll see you tomorrow. Please, Mr. Ole, you don't forget. Thank you.